City Matters.
This is Alan Mindel with Influential Origins, and today I have a fantastic guest, Daniel Ryan Spaulding. Daniel, it is really a privilege and honor to have you here today.
No problem.
Thank you so much for visiting our little center and taking
fun.
some time.
Yeah.
So, Daniel, tell me about growing up in Vancouver.
Mm-hmm. I grew up in Canada, when I was a little boy, growing up in the 90s. I grew up in sort of like a working class neighborhood. I'm not Jewish, but I didn't really have a lot of I didn't know a lot of Jewish people, but I loved all of those like American sitcoms from the 90s, like Seinfeld and all those TV shows that took place in New York. And I always dreamed of like being in that world one day. And I think my earliest memory of like things about the Holocaust, like I grew up again at that time in the early 90s where there was Schindler's List, and I had like very extensive Holocaust education in my schools because Canada fought in World War I and World War II. So we had a lot of education about that. And then my grandma also had lots of friends who were Holocaust survivors in the neighborhood, and I would hear their stories. So I was always very aware of antisemitism and how it looks and what it can do and how it can escalate so quickly.
So your grandfather was from Croatia?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So how did he influence your life, and what was that like?
My grandfather died when I was a little boy. Yeah, so I don't have that many memories of him. But I definitely have always, I basically lived in Canada until I was in my early 20s, and then I moved to Europe. Because I do stand-up comedy, and it was very hard to do that in Canada. People are not very, Canada is really outdoorsy, and people love nature, and there isn't like a dense population of people to really have a super vibrant cultural scene. So I lived in Europe for 12 years and performed all throughout the world. I've performed in over 50 countries, and I lived in Berlin, Germany for 5 years. Before I moved to New York. And in Berlin, I met Israelis and became friends with Israelis. And then I started visiting Israel and doing shows in Israel and getting really engaged with like Israeli people and Israeli culture, which was so great because I always loved Jews so much. And so when I was planning to move to New York and finally have my Seinfeld meets Sex in the City gay life.
Right.
I had met all of these Israelis that were going to, that had connected me with different people in New York. And then my move date was October 16th.
Wow.
And so I was just wrapping up a European tour. My show was about my weight loss because I had lost over 200 pounds.
I'd seen that.
And
You had gotten the sleeve surgery.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And so I just finished a European tour, and I did my show at the National Theater in Tel Aviv on September 30th. And then and then October 7th happened. And so I did like a couple viral videos right after, basically calling out all the Hamas supporters. And then I ended up in New York and was living in New York and basically started this new life where I ended up in this sort of Jewish Israeli advocacy world while also doing stand-up.
But you had established yourself stand-up for a while. I mean, you had first performed at 23 in Vancouver. You were pretty big there.
I went to university and then I moved back to Vancouver, and then I was like, I wanted to be an actor, but I really hated auditioning and stuff.
Right.
And then I started doing stand-up. And then most of my career was in Europe. Yeah.
You had a video that first kind of put you on the scene, that kind of where you exposed the conversations that straight guys would ask gay people.
Yeah. If gay guys said the shit straight people say.
If gay guys said the things straight people
it was
say.
all about like a reversal of like a lot of the annoying questions that gay men get ass, like as if like it was sort of a parallel universe where gays were the majority. But that was sort of like that was like at a time when like TikTok and Instagram weren't very big. So if something went viral on YouTube with 1 million views, like everyone would see it. This was like over 10 years ago. Yeah. But lots of people shared that video. Yeah.
Because it kind of explained to people how questions that maybe they didn't think were offensive.
Yeah.
When the roles were reversed.
Yeah. A lot of my comedy has been very subversive and like flipping scripts and challenging authority and conventional ways of thinking. And then BuzzFeed like took the concept and did like every other version of it. Like if black people said the stuff white people say, if Asians people say the stuff white people say, like they did every other version of it. So people think that it was like a BuzzFeed thing, but it was actually like my idea.
It was, and it was pretty huge. And it's still out there to see. It's pretty effective.
Yeah. Well, not anymore. No one really cares. I don't think people are really homophobic anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think the society has changed, and that's for the better. And that's kind of one of the many benefits of Western society that people don't always appreciate.
If anything, people are homophobic now because of how crazy the queers are. They're so psycho. Like, I can't stand the gay community, all these people who support Hamas. I've become homophobic.
But it's that, well, I think what it is that, you know, if someone was gay in Gaza or in certain countries,
it makes no sense.
You'd be killed.
Yeah, they don't get it. It's this alliance of like Islamists and Marxists and communists and queers and all of this oppressor versus oppressed dynamic that blurs people's perceptions of reality. And it's so true. Like just the fact that the idea of a queer person defending jihadism, I don't think they know what jihadism is. Or they do, and they kind of like it. Like, they get a sick thrill out of it. But in the same way, like, the first viral video I did sparked conversation, and because it was subversion and challenging authority. The first video I did after October 7th did the same thing.
Yeah, I've seen you do things about what protesters are going to think in 30 years when they look back on it.
Yeah, I think that... I think this is like revealed like how incredibly sick the left is right now, and how a lot of these communist ideologies that have been sort of festering in academia have really demoralized the Western left. And I think that with some time, I hope that people will wake up to it. Because it's terrifying.
It's also the antithesis of what they actually thought they were fighting for. What a lot of people thought they were fighting for.
Who on earth aligns themselves? If you are for human rights and you are for like people living in peace, why on earth would you be on the side of Islamist fascists who are trying to destroy a sovereign nation?
And don't believe in women's rights or gay rights. Or
and literally their goal is to destroy the state of Israel and force millions of people to live under Sharia law and to be ethnically cleansed, murdered, raped, everything. Why on earth? What normal thinking person
would go there?
Be on, like, if your hatred for Jews is that deep that you like would violate basic humanist values, that is sick.
Right. What's the rationale that you created in your head?
Yeah.
To justify an action that if you took it independently, you could never stand with.
Right, exactly.
You know.
But also, what about Europe? What about, you know, these countries that are slowly being Islamized? Like, there's already little pockets of Berlin and in Belgium and in the Netherlands where the population is so densely populated with Islamists that the police don't even go there. In Sweden as well. Like, this is all, in my opinion, I think that this war serves a larger purpose to drive up global anti-Semitism, to try to ethnically cleanse Jews out of Western society. Even in terms of like comedians and political commentators being so afraid to speak out and celebrities being so afraid to speak out. There's a whole mechanism in place where you receive bot attacks and you receive character assassination and people threaten you. And there's such a silencing over this issue because people don't want to have this conversation.
Right. They don't want to be attacked for their normal, correspondence.
Yeah.
And I mean, you had a series in Germany, This is Berlin, where you created a character that some people didn't quite understand was not you, but was in fact a character.
Yeah, people don't really understand humor. They don't understand my comedy. Because I play different characters and I do sketches and I also do stand-up and I also do political commentary. So I don't know why that's confusing for people, but most comedians do that.
Right. I mean, that's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to show society something a little different.
I played sort of I did a character, like a character that sort of encompasses that sort of druggy hipster Berlin world. And that's actually anyway, I did that. Yeah.
Well, you did that, right? And that's sort of, in essence, that was not a character. Obviously, that character wasn't you, but it was a representation of something that could exist in Berlin and kind of was a cute way to point out a certain commentary about that society.
Yeah.
That they were willing to accept and enjoyed a great deal. It was a very popular thing at the time to do.
Yeah.
Today, when you look out on that group that absorbed that, how would that work in this environment?
They're completely deranged psychopaths now. Especially after I left Berlin and I saw the reaction to that first video, so many of those people are just raging anti-Semites. I didn't know how powerful the Muslim Brotherhood propaganda was and how much they had subverted people with the boycott, sanction, divest movement and all of this distortion of history. And, it's insane how much people have ate up the Palestinian propaganda. Yeah.
Especially people that, one of the great achievements of Western society for the last 50 years is to create a more fair, more equality-based society where people from every walk of life, race, religion, sexual orientation can be on a balanced playing field and kind of live together in a certain form of harmony. And your work has been a lot about that sort of thing, whether it's pointing out to straight people how they viewed gay people, that maybe they needed to think about it a different way, whether it was people in Europe and Germany, how they were seeing society and thinking about it in a different way, people during the pandemic thinking about it in a different way. And now these people are really bought hook, line, and sinker onto this ideology that would never in a million years accept them or their life.
Yeah. Well, my concern is how, it's all very concerning. I think that people need to get to the point where they understand the bigger picture and the bigger intention of what's happening. The war, the Israel-Hamas war is, first of all, it's it's an existential war. You cannot allow a terrorist regime to go into a sovereign nation and murder people, kidnap people, and then remain in power. So,
as your neighbor.
Yes.
And then wonder why you don't let them in for jobs to work.
Well, forget about that. It's a signal to every other jihadist terrorist regime like Boko Haram, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, that they can do the same thing and get away with it. Right. And so it is regardless of who the prime minister of Israel is, regardless of who the president of the United States is, regardless if you're left or right, it's a matter of what can we allow on an existential level to occur in our civilization, and we cannot allow that. Right. And so what Hamas is counting on, like they're not playing by the same rules as Israel.
I think this is maybe one of the most important points that you can go through.
And they are doing everything they can. They violate every single rule of war. Israel is in a situation where they're basically being tested and pushed to the limit and the breaking point of like how much they can execute this war, like abiding by international law, when the other side is doing everything possible, violating international law. And all of these international organizations have been corrupted, either by Islamists or communists or funding of Qatar or funding of Iran, from the Red Cross collaborating with them, to Amnesty International collaborating with them, to the sham ICJ trials from South Africa being paid by Iran to accuse them of genocide. Obviously, it's not a genocide. But if Hamas is constantly stealing the humanitarian aid, and we end up with visuals of people when the aid comes and they're all lined up and grabbing the aid, and there's all these moments of chaos. Of course, there's going to be moments of chaos during war. It's a war.
Well,
but this war, the intention of this war was to create a situation where Israel is in a position of constant Holocaust inversion. And this is like the intention of the war, is to paint the Jews, to paint the Israelis as, oh, look at these people who, like, now the oppressed have become the oppressors. Now that they have power, they're committing a genocide. It's this horrible blood libel that has existed for thousands of years that has like come to the surface.
And it's a funny thing, because I think you just brought up one of the things that I think is like incredibly important for people to see at this moment while we're recording this. Israel took over providing the humanitarian aid, food, directly to Palestinian people, because the UN, since October 7th, literally took food and either gave it or allowed it to be stolen by Hamas directly. Mm-hmm. So if you are a citizen in Gaza and you wanted to eat a meal, no matter how much aid flowed into the country, you'd have to buy it from Hamas or do something to Hamas or pledge allegiance to a government that, you know, they have shot their own people, they have beheaded their own people. They took the opposition years ago in 2007, how Hamas got in power. They took the Fatah people, took them to the tallest building.
Yeah.
Threw them off the roof.
Yeah.
I mean, Republicans and Democrats don't like each other, but there's yet to be, you know.
Yeah. Mass murder.
Mass murder, right? So it's a very different thing. And now food is being provided directly by the Israelis. And the UN went crazy.
Yeah. Well, people don't understand that the UN is not a credible institution, that it's completely corrupted. Because to be a member of the UN does not mean you have to be a good country. It just means you have to be a country.
Right.
And the majority of countries are not Western democracies.
Right.
They're run by autocrats. They're run by dictators. They're run by people who have an invested interest in weakening the West. And Israel is our Western ally in the free world. It is a Middle Eastern country. It's a Jewish country and state, but it is within a Judeo-Christian framework of a liberal Western country where women have rights and gay people have rights, and there's freedom of speech. And so this is really about taking down the West. Israel is just the appetizer.
Proxy.
Yeah.
For that.
Yeah.
Because if you go, you know, in the UN, you know, one of the leaders of women's rights at the UN is Iran.
Yeah.
And I mean, Iran, if you show your hair as a woman, you will be arrested.
Yeah. I think that people don't really understand, like Enoch Wilf has this great saying where she's like, prestige overrides logic. There's a prestige to these institutions where we think that there's still that they're still respectable and that they're still valid, like global institutions that are about peace. And they're not. They're completely corrupted by autocrats and evil, bad people. Right. And that's all I said.
That's the world.
Yeah.
So, you had a career that you had built on pointing out some of the interesting things in society, right? And you had found this interesting path where you were very well regarded in Israel. Your comedy was understood, accepted, and loved, right? And then October 7th happens, right? And you look out at the world and you go, this is insanity. It's like the emperor has no clothes.
Yeah.
And so you make your statement, and what does the rest of the world tell you?
Well, I don't know. I didn't realize how much it was a plan to destroy the West until a month or two in. I didn't really know what I was doing at first. Right. I just thought, oh, these people are stupid. I didn't know that it was such a big thing. And I didn't know that the subversion had been going on for decades, and that these people are really sick and whacked out of their heads. And I didn't realize that it was going to continue. I didn't realize it was just going to get worse and worse and worse. And we were going to see how evil people were and how silent people were. Because I'm so disappointed in so many celebrities and so many people in positions of power who could have done something and didn't.
And can do something.
And could still do something.
And don't.
And it's been very hard to have to, bear this horrible, regardless, I always have to put into perspective, I am not a soldier in the IDF. I am not a 19-year-old Israeli kid facing down this evil. So we always have to put that into perspective.
Right.
But in terms of my personal journey, to be so terribly bullied and ostracized and abused online nonstop, and to have so many people agree with me, but then not want to associate with me because they're worried about their reputations and they're worried about how it might affect them. I just had no idea that people were such cowards.
Because, I had no idea that either until October 7th.
Yeah.
And the thing that I think amazes me is, what's the point of being an artist if you can't be true to your art?
Yeah.
If you can't be honest about it, because all art is about a form of honesty.
Yeah.
And your art in particular, pre-October 7th, was always about honesty in the world. And where in the world is that integrity going today?
Yeah, I remember there's this photo that I wish I could find it. It's a photo of Ronan Nutra, who's the father of Omer Nutra.
Right.
And he's showing...
From here, by the way.
Yeah. And he's showing Steven Spielberg a photo of his son.
Right.
And Steven Spielberg is basically looking at him like this. Kind of very uncomfortable, very much I don't want to have this conversation. I don't want to hear about this.
Right.
And I couldn't believe it. When I saw it, and you just see his body language and you see the face, and I'm like, you are awful. You're an awful coward, and you're terrible. And you've betrayed everything that you built and stood for.
I mean, this is the guy that he directed Schindler's List.
Yeah.
He funded the Shoah Society, so we're in a Holocaust center.
Yeah.
Most Holocaust testimony is because Steven Spielberg helped create it.
Yeah.
When he told the biography of his life, he talked about the anti-Semitism that he faced, right?
Right.
So
they have a very hard time coming to terms with the fact that Islamists are the new Nazis.
It's very hard.
Jihadists are the new Nazis. Islamists are the new Nazis.
I think the reason that is a very difficult concept, and I have my own, I don't have a difficulty with it. I make sure in my mind to separate it. And what I mean by that is, one of the lessons of the Holocaust is everyone should be able to pray to whichever God they believe in. They should be able to have whatever religion they have, and no one should be judged by their background. That's the other thing that, as a, child of Holocaust survivors, it took a long time. You spent a lot of time in Germany. I remember the first time I entered Germany, and it was painful for me because I knew what had happened to my family. I knew what that story was about. But at the same time, I can't blame the German people, all of them, for what happened to my parents necessarily 80 years ago.
No, I understand that, but we have to have a mature conversation about it. There are countries that are at peace with Israel, like the UAE,
right? And they're Muslim countries.
Yes, and there's Sunni countries,
right?
But it's the extremists.
Correct.
If you are going to take a Palestinian flag and start doing jihad in the streets of New York City, I'm sorry, right. I don't want you in my society.
Right. If you're going to kill 2 young kids that happen to work at an embassy, one of them from Middle America, who both of them are people that are peace activists in their own way, that went to a conference to help feed people in Gaza, and they get gunned down and shot repeatedly, in the nation's capital.
Yeah.
If you're someone that is applauding that, you're the problem in society.
Yeah.
Yeah. The problem isn't necessarily, I work with lots of people of the Muslim faith. They're phenomenal, fantastic people. And yet I also know people that are not Muslim that have been so brainwashed by this whole thing or simply hate Jews.
Yeah.
And it's tough to tell which is which.
Well, the strategy of jihadists is to get you to identify with the jihad. So it's not terrorism, it's collective liberation.
Right.
It's decolonization.
Right.
It's they target different communities and say our struggle is your struggle.
Right.
And it's all about, it's lots of feminization. It's always olive trees and scarves and doves, as if women are these earthy mother types.
Right. But a year ago, a woman couldn't drive a car in that country that funded them.
It's like this extremist society with Sharia law.
They can't own property. You know, they're not allowed to leave the country without the permission of their male counterpart.
Yeah, but it's all very much poetry, and it's very bohemian, and it's women in scarves.
Right.
Yeah, it's manipulation. It's the greatest manipulation.
It's the greatest manipulation because they don't believe the manipulation that they've sold.
Yeah.
And the problem is that we believe in that free society, in Western society.
Yeah.
And what starts with the Jews, it never ends with the Jews.
Well, but not only that, if a terrorist starts shooting up Times Square, they're not going to be targeting Jewish people. They'll target whoever is there in Times Square. What is the matter with people?
And they're going to rationalize that shooting.
Dead? Are they brain dead?
Right.
They're brain dead.
I mean, I know where I was on 9/11.
Yeah.
I'm sure you remember where you were on 9/11.
Yeah.
And it's that same hate that created 9/11 that we're still dealing with today.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for spending time with us today.
No problem.
And I hope it was a good experience for you. We really appreciated having you. And we wish you nothing but great success in all your future endeavors. And you always have a home here.
Oh, thank you. I might need to come here. I might get a fatwa soon.
We'll figure it out. We've got Glen Cove is kind of in the woods. They'll have a hard time finding you here. We'll figure it out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
That's our podcast today.